taking down Soleimani, wiping out al-Baghdadi when he tried to reinstitute ISIS. We did a lot. I did a lot of big things, all perfectly executed. Everyone was perfectly executed. Somebody told me that, a military expert told me, "Sir, everything you've done has been perfectly executed." I said, I know.
That's amazing.
I know.
He said, I know. I know. If you kill the guy and you want to take credit for it, you can't get his name wrong every time.
I don't know, man.
Soleimani, it's like, who?
We know of new methods of attack. The Trojan horse, the fifth column.
Greetings and welcome back to another exciting installment of the Fifth Column Podcast. This is your weekly rhetorical assault on the news cycle, the people that make it, occasionally ourselves. I'm Kmele Foster. I am not in Davos. I'm in New York City. I'm delighted to be here. I'm with Matt Welch,
Our own
with
Davos,
Michael Moynihan. Gentlemen, how are you?
When did you time the Adderall?
20 minutes ago.
Okay.
But it's only a half a tab.
So you're telling him to tune out in about 10 minutes when it really kicks in?
I'm thrilled to be with you guys. I feel like we should talk about what's happening in Davos. It's kind of a big deal. Donald Trump back at the World Economic Forum, making America great again, making the case for the country.
Is that what he was
making
doing?
the case for Greenland, or is it Iceland? I can't remember.
Well, he can't remember either.
Well, that's fine.
I noticed,
it's hard.
by the way, when we were
up
looking
sometimes.
at clips earlier of where, I mean, he's obviously dope about most of this stuff, but the confusion was, I didn't notice this before. He precedes it by saying it's just a great big piece of ice, and then it becomes Iceland immediately after.
Where is the lie?
Yeah. No, it's true. You know, Iceland's green, Greenland ice.
land?
But he then, of course, calls it Iceland, which is kind of hard because the people of Iceland might want to be on guard at Keflavik Airport that might expand and we might take over Reykjavik too.
Although it sounds like they don't need to be on guard, Matt Welch. Sounds like everything is fine.
God damn it. Don't even start with me. Don't even start with me.
I mean, should we start
Let's
with
start
Donald
with
Trump saying that no military intervention is in the cards, but there's a big but.
Yeah.
Let's watch that.
We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay? Now everyone's saying, oh, good. That's probably the biggest statement I made because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force. All the United States is asking for is a place called Greenland, where we already had it as a trustee, but respectfully returned it back to Denmark not long ago after we defeated the Germans, the Japanese, the Italians, and others in World War II. We gave it back to them.
Wow.
I like that he added the Italians. Yeah. That was the first time the Italians defeated themselves.
This is very good. He would
gave it
do
back to
anything for Greenland, but he won't do that, Matt Welch. Why isn't that enough for you?
It's a
Why aren't you
Meatloaf
satisfied?
song.
Well, because he doesn't rule out force in that statement.
He said he won't do it.
Said he probably won't do it because he won't have to. He just wants a place called Greenland. So if he gets a place called Greenland, then he won't have to use military force. And regardless, like he could change his mind in a half a second. That's the real issue, not just for people in Greenland and people in Denmark, but people in the United States and certainly people in Congress. Like the idea is that we are now just, what did he say 2 weeks ago? Like the only constraint to my presidency is my own morality. So congratulations to everybody who is part of that project because we're just constrained by his morality. Not at all by, for instance, public opinion polls showing that Americans are 85-9 against invading Greenland and against having Greenland. You know, even do we just want a place called Greenland? We're 70-30 against that shit too. As long as he has the ability just to change his mind and do what he wants to do, then the threat is still there. The threat is implied pretty directly in this and other parts of the speech. We just want it. Listen, we just want it. And we happen to be the largest military in the world. And even the threat of it is enough to make the transatlantic alliance this is the biggest week that we have seen in 50 years. That's a challenge to truly the beginning of the end of the post-World War II order. So, no, the threat is not off the fucking table.
No, it's also a funny thing because it was finally the Wall Street Journal noticed this morning and has been reporting what Putin has been saying, what Izvestia has been saying, what KP and all these newspapers in Russia have been saying. But Putin himself said something very specific. And keeping in mind the casus belli here for the war that hasn't happened is we have to keep Russia out of the Arctic.
It's very important.
Russia and China.
And China.
Yeah.
But note Putin's response to this. He was asked about this, and he was in front of a lectern. Donald Trump, by the way, who's the guy that's doing audio there? Fucking Lemmy's sound guy? His mic is like up here. It's a very, very weird shot if you're not seeing that. He's talking up to it that way. But what Putin said was pretty straightforward. He's like, it's their backyard. They should, give Donald Trump some credit. Let him do that. Basically, was what he said. Why does he say that? Number one, of course, because it justifies spheres of influence in the invasion of Ukraine. Mm-hmm. But number two, and more than anything, it achieves what the Russians have been trying to achieve since after the war. It splits NATO. I mean, so we have to do this because of Russia. Russia's like, yeah, do it. Do it. And finally, the Wall Street Journal pointed out this morning with, official statements, media statements in Russia, which are, of course, all centrally controlled. But the idea that this is to counter Russia, Russia is very happy about. They're like, oh, yeah, go ahead. Counter us. Counter us. Blow up your alignment. In that speech, just in general, we'll watch more clips of it. There's a general derangement that you've seen in Trump speeches, which are increasing over time. This one is like stratospheric in its like incoherence, in its just bizarre asides. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I noticed while listening to the speech this morning is that he's incapable of talking to a particular audience. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing lack of skill. People say he's an incredible communicator. He is in some ways. But knowing the audience, he's always running for he's like, we did this for tax policy in the U.S.
Yeah.
Do you know what, people, they don't have to pay this tax now. It's like, what? You're talking to the foreign minister of Belgium about some minor tax adjustment
we
for
got
people in America?
stagflation down.
Yeah.
Shout out to Gavin.
And he still calls him Sleepy Joe to a room full of dignitaries at Davos.
He mentioned Biden, I don't know how many times. I looked for a transcript before we started, but it felt like dozens of times.
Yeah.
He also kept mentioning here. Yeah. You're not in the United States, dude. They maybe got the teleprompter switched up. He did do, I saw a teleconference into Davos last year, and that was like 3 or 4 days after he was sworn in. It was kind of a similar speech in terms of the rah-rah America bits. No mentions of Greenland in that particular speech. But as I said, did mention Biden several times and talked about like the great American Renaissance. Talked a hell of a lot more about things like affordability and all sorts of other things related to the United States. Even mentions the national debt there and the interest paid on the debt and inflation.
Which
those
would be
kinds of
interesting.
things didn't really come up in this
always has
context.
the debt numbers right on the top of his head.
We're close to 40 trillion, I think.
Okay, well, add another one.
Yeah.
Add another trillion, because what Donald Trump has said, well, I'm not going to invade.
We're
going to work out a deal, which is almost $1 trillion, $800 billion, and then some add-ons, which would, then we, of course, have to take on the welfare state of Greenland, which is a 57,000 person welfare state, and various other things, and get those minerals that, the Danes aren't really pursuing and other companies aren't pursuing because it's incredibly expensive to extract them. And there's, obviously, if it were an easy thing to do, in a way like Venezuelan oil, we would just turn the switch and do it. The Danes would turn the switch and do it. That is $1 trillion down the tubes. For what? For a landmass governed by the Danes, who are happy, and the Greenlandic people too, happy with, and it's also codified in treaties, that we can do whatever the hell we want there, more or less.
I mean, and also let's keep in mind that it's not just sort of like guessing in an MSNBC way, but he's been very explicit, including in direct communications that he's leaked to the president of Norway and such, that this is at least in part about being snubbed for the Nobel Peace Prize.
I mean, he texted,
are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
The prime minister, the Labour prime minister of Norway, that specifically. There was the reporting with Maria Corina Machado that she won the Nobel Prize, and that irked him, and that was swatted down by a number of people in MAGA world very quickly. Could you imagine the president
fake
does that?
News.
In the man, I mean, it was so bad, that text to the president of Norway, the prime minister of Norway, that many MAGA people thought it was fake. This is fake news. No, it's not. And it turns out to be real. And it's like, wow.
The cycle is that's fake news. And then, of course,
it's good, actually.
That's great.
And it's awesome. It's real and it's awesome.
Yeah. Participation trophies.
Will anyone try to make the case for Greenland? I mean, this has been the president giving the most detailed case yet for why the United States should own Greenland. Is there any part of it that you guys found compelling? And
no.
Can anyone summarize what they heard? Because for me, it just sounds like we want them because it's better to own than to lease, considering we're going to spend all this money.
The dumbest fucking argument is this application of the real estate guy to sovereign nations and sovereign territories.
Okay.
But the mysterious thing about all of this is not so mysterious when you have two things. One is the text to the Prime Minister of Norway. The other one is the New York Times editorial board when he's sitting talking to them and they say, why do you want Greenland? Mm-hmm. And he basically, I don't remember the exact word, maybe someone can grab it for me. Vanity is basically what he said, personal something. And they said, God, what was that? I have to look that up.
Some sort of like psychic benefit that would be derived from owning Greenland.
And he said, for me.
Yeah.
Not the United States, not the Transatlantic Coalition, for me.
There's a clip in here where he talks about he references you guys used to take land. You kind of went in reverse and this stuff. But if we have that clip available, I think it is revealing a little bit about some of the motivations. I love that
also the clip we just watched. And he was like, we were there. We won World War II for you, which, by the way.
Just for you, the Danes.
Just for you. It was because Europeans used to take land.
Yeah.
And we decided to push them in the other direction.
We saw this in World War II. When Denmark fell to Germany after just 6 hours of fighting and was totally unable to defend either itself or Greenland. So the United States was then compelled. We did it. We felt an obligation to do it, to send our own forces to hold the Greenland territory. And hold it we did at great cost and expense. They didn't have a chance of getting on it, and they tried. Denmark knows that. We literally set up bases on Greenland for Denmark. We fought for Denmark. We weren't fighting for anyone else. We were fighting to save it for Denmark. Big, beautiful piece of ice. It's hard to call it land. It's a big piece of ice.
Yeah.
But we saved Greenland and successfully prevented our enemies from gaining a foothold in our hemisphere. So we did it for ourselves also. And then after the war, which we won it big. Without us, right now you'd all be speaking German and a little Japanese, perhaps.
Little.
Only a little, Moynihan.
Little Japanese. So that wasn't the clip to which I was referring, although it's awesome in its own amazing way. But he basically said this is a normal thing. You guys used to acquire land. I mean, recall that in his first day of office when he renamed Mount McKinley. He said, we're doing this after, the tariff man president. But the first thing he said about him of why that's great, why McKinley is great, wasn't about tariffs. It was like President McKinley, who expanded U.S. territory. He wants to expand U.S. territory. Saying this from the fucking minute that he was inaugurated. That's it. That's what he wants to do. The biggest reason that makes any kind of shred of sense, only because I don't understand fully the technology of it, is like, well, we can't really do Iron Dome, which he said was purely American technology, which it's not.
Golden Dome.
The Golden Dome, sorry.
Yes, Raytheon.
We can't do Golden Dome unless we have Greenland. That's the only one that possibly makes sense. But there's no military access to Greenland that we don't have. So if this is a military thing, it doesn't make any sense.
No, we close bases over time. We can open them now because of an agreement that we have with Greenland and Denmark. But that potted history is pretty interesting too. That we saved Greenland after the Germans invaded. Well, it took a little time. It was about a year later, in 1941, that Americans put some troops there, and the Nazis had no interest in, Greenland. We need Greenland. No, that was not Norway. They had Norway and northern Norway and Narvik. There's fighting in Narvik, and there's a whole heavy water situation for atomic weapons, which they're trying to get in Norway. But this idea that Norway, I think this is one of the most offensive parts of the speech, which is full of offensive bits, And I haven't seen anyone talking about this because no one gives a shit about Denmark. They, much like, the administration doesn't seem to give a shit about Venezuelans or Iranians. It's all in the sort of Trump way of thinking about the world. But Denmark was amazingly heroic during the Second World War. That is not true of a lot of occupied countries.
Yes.
I mean, there's an old myth that the King of Denmark rode around on his horse. He did ride around on his horse all the time, wearing a yellow star in solidarity with Jews. Not true, but the Danes refused until 1943, when the government collapsed and it became essentially an occupation government, to implement the Yellow Star policy. They saved almost all their Jews. Over the Öresund Sound into Sweden, they performed heroically. The resistance, I mean, one of the reasons the government collapsed in 43 was the resistance. The people were going to be executed, and they were going to handle these people. And the Danish government said, no. There was no Vichy-style government in Denmark. They performed wonderfully. That kind of version of history, they rolled over you in a couple of days and then we had to save you, is horrifying. It's a horrifying vision of the one country in Europe that always, and it is always number one, stands out for resistance to fascism and to Nazism, and particularly the anti-Semitic element of it. For they saved their Jews in concert with the German that was tipping them off that they were going to be rounded up, and they saved them. Almost all of them, not all of them, but almost all of them. And that kind of gross thing. And also, by the way, at the end, when you're like, you'd all be speaking German. What are you, a fucking 18-year-old college student? That's what every dumb guy with a lacrosse hat and a lanyard says when he's drunk at a bar in Paris.
Or said.
Fuck you.
Said 35, 45 years ago. It's a stale joke.
It's a stale, immature joke to a room of people who deserve better. They don't deserve a ton, because a lot of people that I have zero respect for in that room in Davos, probably a majority of them, great majority of them. But it's just, I find the whole thing really off-putting.
And it's just a weird look to say, you'd all be speaking German. I appreciate the little Japanese. I'll be speaking German when the kind of surrounding text and sometimes the direct text, both in terms of Trump, certainly Howard Lutnick in his speech there, and other people, and then Mark Carney in the speech we'll talk about, is about the dissolution of the post-World War II order. Why did we create that order? Why was America leading that? Did anything happen recently? And did that have something to do with Germany? It's a weird look to you'd be speaking German without us. And that's why it's really, really important to engage in a bunch of activities that dissolves all of the post we just beat fucking Germany world order, right? It doesn't land anymore. You better kiss our ring because we're going to be there for you. No, you're just not. The whole point of this thing, and he says later in other clips that and very unconvincingly, that, hey, if the U.S. was attacked, NATO wouldn't be there for us. But we know that if other country, we would be there for them. That's not what those countries feel like. I don't think that's what Poland and the Baltics particularly feel like right now. We
mentioned this the other day, but at the RNC in Cleveland in 2015, right, he made a comment either there or right preceding it about why he would not want to defend Tallinn from Soviet tanks. Or Russian tanks, same thing, basically. But also to that point, why did so many people in the places that you lived in the 90s not speak English so well? Because their second language in school was Russian. And that was funded by the United States with Lend-Lease and carving things up at Yalta. So, yeah, you'd be speaking German. Well, yeah, half of Europe was unfortunately having to learn Russian to navigate.
If you let Patton get his way, there'd be more people who have spoken.
That's a different episode.
Yeah. I think we've got some more clips from Davos.
It's the United States alone that can protect this giant mass of land, this giant piece of ice, develop it and improve it and make it so that it's good for Europe and safe for Europe and good for us. And that's the reason I'm seeking immediate negotiations to once again discuss the acquisition of Greenland by the United States, just as we have acquired many other territories throughout our history, as many of the European nations have. They've acquired. There's nothing wrong with it. Many of them, some went in reverse, actually, if you look. Some had great, vast wealth, great vast lands all over the world. They went in reverse. They're stuck back where they started. That happens too. But some grow.
Doesn't seem like he got a lot of sleep on the plane over.
Is that a lament for the Belgian Congo? I think is that what that was?
I mean, think about it in concert with Stephen Miller's amazing Christmas vacation tweeting about like watching, Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra comedies or Christmas movies, and saying like, imagine that people will watch this and they want unbridled immigration from the third world. It's like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And then like his
it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of white people in that, and he wants more white people.
I mean, that's not what we called Italians back then, but
how the Italians became white.
But he said that same thing. Like after World War II, the European powers they withdrew, and then they let all these third world immigrants come in, and that's how they all got ruined. I mean, it's absolutely in concert with what Trump is saying there.
And with the national security strategy, which it should be noted, never mentioned Greenland, which was about, what was it, 50% about European immigration? And he says it in the speech, I got friends, I don't recognize it. He kept on saying this thing, like they come back from Europe, I don't even recognize this. And it's like, you're talking about the banlieues of Paris? That's what you're concerned about?
I mean, what the fact of his actions here, very similar to what his actions, the repercussions of his actions in Canada, in Canadian politics, where there was going to be a conservative government for the first time in a really long time. And he acted like such a dick to Canada. There was a rally around the flag kind of a moment. And that's why Mark Carney is in there, not Pierre, how do you pronounce his last name, guy, the apple eater guy. Mm-hmm. But you're seeing that in Europe. All of the far right nationalist political parties who were singled out in the national security strategy. Like, we won't tell Middle East countries what to do, but we will try to foment a political renaissance in Western Europe among nationalist parties, which is a very, very weird kind of selective interest in other people's affairs. But those parties right now, what are they doing? They're like, fuck America.
Yeah, no, it's the mainstream ones. You have these kind of fringy ones that become more kind of Trumpy over time. They have a little MAGA kind of strain to them. But National Rally, Front National in France, which is now National Rally, they've responded to this. Denmark, the Danish People's Party, has responded to this in a negative way. Across the board, until you get to the real knuckle draggers, they're the kind of Laura Loomer types of Europe.
And also Viktor Orban.
Yeah, who's obviously, a case to himself, a Putinist case to himself. But if you notice, there was a cake cutting. Did you see this?
No.
Did anyone see this? There's a video of it, a cake cutting with an assemblage of the stupidest people in Congress. And it says quite a bit because they're all quite dumb. But this is back to what I was saying a couple episodes ago. We are in the middle of this epidemic of stupidity where people perform in politics because they were introduced to politics in the Trump era and in the Twitter era. And, we did a live stream and somebody asked Kmele about this. And I was like, what are they talking about? It's like, oh, yeah, we had this conversation previously about the politics of respectability. Of like, we used to have this respectability, who cares? The problem is you open that door to people like Anna Paulina Luna, the bikini model.
Yes.
Who is with a
Kmele wakes up.
Yeah. No, she was very good at being a bikini model.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure about how well she does in Congress. But they were cutting a cake that was the shape of Greenland with the Greenlandic flag on it, along with a member of a party in Romania who, as it was pointed out by a number of people who were kind of Romanian political watchers, posted a series of photos of this guy who was previously a football hooligan. Pictures of him like fighting the police, and he's this real dopey looking guy.
So man of the people.
Looks like most of the people who are on Twitter talking about the Holocaust all the time. Those guys that wear backwards baseball casts and have like jug ears, like talking about, the narrative of the Holocaust. He's there with 3 idiots from Congress cutting up a cake of Greenland. And it's like, these people 6 months ago probably couldn't have located Greenland or wouldn't have been able to tell you that Greenland had any association with Denmark.
Because they may still not be able to locate it on a map.
Probably not. I mean, it's pretty big. It's an easy one. Yeah.
I do wonder, though, are members of NATO slightly reassured after that speech relative to where they were before? Well, let me just, let's play this out a little bit. He didn't throw the gauntlet down. He said, like, give it to us. It's all we've ever wanted. Like, please, please, please. And I think we have this clip as well. If you do it, we'll be grateful. If you don't do it, we'll remember.
Yeah, it's called the mafia.
Yeah.
So we want a piece of ice for world protection, and they won't give it. We've never asked for anything else, and we could have kept that piece of land, and we didn't. So they have a choice. You can say yes, and we will be very appreciative, or you can say no, and we will remember.
Who the fuck is we?
That's
No,
him.
seriously.
Yeah.
Who the fuck is we? Like
I think he's referring to
a
himself.
secret ballot of Congress. Okay, there still would be probably, at least if it was secret, there'd still be 30% idiot Republicans who, like, whatever he says is we.
Yeah. And then they would go public with it. So he would give them a pat in the head. Yeah.
Yeah, but again, with American public is steadfastly against that. So what is the we in the remember? No, that is a threat. That is a threat.
No, I mean, it's a classic mafia threat. This idea that, if you don't, you could give it to us. That'd be really nice. I mean, there was a Republican senator, I don't remember who it was, talking about Jerome Powell the other day on Fox. Did you see this? Absolutely astonishing, where he said, I would just go to Jerome Powell and say, if you lower interest rates, we can make these charges disappear. On television, you dumb fuck. And it's like, you know what? You have to appreciate that the corruption is naked and in public, and they're quite honest about it in some ways. But no, the NATO stuff, I did an episode of my show the other day with the great Johan Norberg, and he pointed out something to me that I hadn't seen, because in Sweden, unfortunately, all their newspapers, you have to subscribe for everything now. You can't get anything. And Dagens Nyheter, which is the main center-left kind of New York Times of Sweden, had an unsigned editorial this week, which Johan was very, very positive about, that Sweden should think about acquiring nuclear weapons.
Of course.
I mean, here we are. And do you think that rambling dog's breakfast of a speech, which you don't really know where he comes down, we're not going to take it, but we're going to take it. We're not going to take it. We will take it if you don't do it.
We could. We
definitely
could.
What are we going to take? Iceland or Greenland? What are you talking about? There is no reassurance anywhere in that, in the same way that Johan and I also talked about tariffs and economic performance. And it's like he's threatening tariffs on Europe while we are negotiating those tariffs that we've been talking about with Europe for the past 8 months. They're still in negotiations.
Just suspended the deal.
Suspended the deal.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, all of the ripple effects of this, and I am so goddamn tired, and I want to get to this in a minute when I want to throw this back to you guys. All of these idiots that supported Trump in the most vociferous ways, and a lot of them in Silicon Valley, by the way, are saying, this is just
art of the deal.
It's the art of the deal. It's like, is this the way you do your VC deals? You threaten people. You threaten to blow things up. You threaten to blow up their house, to steal their house, to punch their daughters in the face. You do this, and because they're so scared of you, they come to the table. That's not how you do it. And the idea that this does not have knock-on effects of Europe's trust in America as an ally. There was a story the other day about, I think it was Ukraine, but it could be anyone, really, of not doing any more intelligence sharing with the American intelligence community because they don't trust us. I think it was Ukraine.
Trust Tulsi Gabbard? That's so weird.
How would you not, right? But this is something that I'm sure is happening in MI5, at the BND, at PET in Denmark. Another thing to say about Denmark, PET, the Secret Service, is really good. They are very, very good, notoriously good. Do we have an information sharing agreement with them now? Are they holding things back? I guarantee you they are.
Mm-hmm. And let's also remember and kind of take ownership for this bigger we than this table, but of that it's not just that they don't trust Donald Trump. You can't solve this problem by making him go away, by dreaming of impeachment, which I see people are doing again, which I'm against steadfastly.
Are you?
I'm absolutely against I think he absolutely deserves impeachment, and that I'm against doing it.
Why?
Because it's a fucking shortcut. Stop it with the Hail Mary fucking shortcuts. Like, was it Tom Tillis or some senator went Denmark or Greenland, whatever, ice, snow, and sort of like, if he does this, then impeachment. How about this instead? You're a senator, like a sitting one right now. You could pass a resolution tomorrow. You could even get enough votes if you actually had people with courage, and if you tried to convince them, you could make it veto-proof, saying, motherfucker, you can't even threaten the military on Greenland. Stop it. There are so many things that Congress could do right now, not just on the topic of Greenland, but on the topic of using war powers in Venezuela. And I hope is he still there? He's not paying attention. Good. There's all kinds of things.
He's planning an invasion.
Certainly with tariffs right now that you can do. You can limit the president's ability to use bullshit emergency declarations. There's bills in Congress right now. You could be passing those bills right now.
But none of that is working at the moment.
No, because they're not talking about that. They're talking about impeachment, or they're talking about should we take it to ICE in Minnesota, for example. There was a 3,000-word political story the other day about like Capitol Hill disputes over ICE. I'm like, cool, what's the bill? There isn't a bill in 3,000 words in Politico, a DC newspaper. It's all about Democrats saying we want to abolish or defund ICE, and Republicans saying, my God, they want to abolish or defund ICE.
Did the Politburo ever come up with bills? No, I mean, they know that what is the utility of coming up with a bill when there's nobody in Congress that will do anything? I think,
but you have to do that. You have to fucking do that.
That is your job.
It's not going to get better. And so if you are a foreign country looking at this stuff, you don't trust America because you don't trust Congress right now. Congress has abdicated. The Republican Party as a unit has absolutely fucking abdicated anything like legislative responsibility. Democrats have their own version of that as well.
Too, but
it's not going to get better unless that changes.
The reason I think that we talked a lot about tariffs at the beginning, mostly because we're nerdy about this subject, and would always joke about it and say like, all right, guys, we're going to talk about tariff policy, strap in. I think that it's the most important thing in America probably for the next 6 months. And the reason I think that is because, we expected that maybe it would happen yesterday. It was really going to come down yesterday, maybe the end of the week. And they have until, I guess, June. So maybe it'd be end of the term. And so it may be February. I would like them to speed it up because this one seems to be a pretty open and shut case to me, that Congress has that power and the IEPA emergency powers are being grossly abused. The reason that this, I think, should be the focus is Donald Trump's response to everything is tariffs. I can't get Greenland, tariffs. Modi said, you didn't stop the war between us, tariffs. He tariffed in response to being mad at Modi for saying, they dressed it up in other language.
Wasn't the 200% tariff proposal about champagne because Macron with the blue shades refused to join his board of peace?
Yes.
Which is a pay-for-play bullshit that Vladimir Putin can be on?
Times.
Correct.
Yeah.
He keeps threatening that. Lukashenko and Putin will be on the board of peace if they pay $1 billion. No, this is normal. This is normal politics. Are you fucking kidding me? In this tariff ability, which he is wielding in a reckless and stupid way that is sometimes implemented, sometimes not implemented, Congress should be involved in this. And by the way, this bullshit Republican Congress could probably, get these things rubber stamped, but they're going to, lose that power very soon, I think, in the midterms. But if this is the one place where I worry that if the Supreme Court rules that, as they should, and as I suspect they probably will, because we've heard some of the arguments, that this is a power not vested entirely in the president, can do it, the IEPA stuff, but this is a bullshit reason for it, that this would be the moment where he's going to have a showdown and disobey the courts.
Moynihan,
because it's so important to him in every aspect of his foreign
He might have
policy.
other levers to do the same thing, though.
But do you agree with Welch's conclusion that the impeachment is a shortcut and then it is unacceptable? From my standpoint, if there were sufficient support for impeachment, if you could actually do it, the mechanism is there. It's defined in the Constitution. It's the thing that they can do. Why isn't that as legitimate as passing a piece of legislation to the extent you actually have congressional support for that action? If you have it, there's a reason why it's there.
If you had that much support, then you could actually
pass a piece of
legislation.
Yeah.
And in that process, defrock power from the presidency. Because what's going to fucking happen? It's going to be Democrats like, well, That's a lot of power, and we need to use it for good. And that is, we're not going to presidential power our way out of whatever hole that we're in right now.
Although if you make impeachment great again, that might bring the president to heel.
And you make J.D. Vance the president.
No longer. Anyway.
Yes.
He could get impeached too.
The problem with impeachment is the failed impeachments. And the failed impeachments that helped, like the failed lawfare prosecutions, helped Donald Trump in the long run. I mean, it wasn't a bit of shame to have the mugshot of Donald Trump. He posed for it, and they made T-shirts of it. And I saw it at Trump rallies. There's no shame in like the impeachment. They're not like, oh God, like the Bill Clinton impeachment, which was a colossal failure and a stupid impeachment for a number of reasons. And Ken Starr did a terrible job of it. And I argued with him about when I interviewed him not long before he died in Florida. And it struck me that he had some reservations about the entire thing in the end too. But obviously that was the one time that the sitting president's party not only did well in the midterms, but did really well in the midterms. I mean, no one really cared about that, but it was also supposed to be, from the Republican standpoint, such a shameful thing for him that he was being impeached. There is no shame for Donald Trump. It is a badge of honor. It is something that he wishes upon himself because he knows in this case that it won't work. It hasn't worked previously, and it only makes him stronger. But I just don't think, to Matt's point, I think is right, if that there is no shortcut out of this. The way out of this is a Republican Party that looks like any version of the Republican Party prior to Donald Trump, any of them. I don't even care. I hated them all before that too. But would actually go into Congress and not be, it's not even a rubber stamp Congress because nothing goes to Congress. It's not as, I mean, Donald Trump has taken the imperial presidency. It's hilarious what we think the imperial presidency was under George W. Bush and Barack Obama. It is 1,000 times worse. It's not as if we don't have a number of things, a list of things, a scroll of things that would be in a normal political universe impeachable. I mean, the corruption is naked. It is insane. I mean, there was a story on Drudge the other day. How did Donald Trump earn $1.5 billion in the past year? Let's take a look. Should maybe we be paying attention to that? Nah, nobody cares. Bill Clinton getting jerked off by the girl in the beret, and at least he was nice and gave her a fucking Walt Whitman book. It's kind of romantic.
Is that so nice?
I thought it was beautiful. Yeah. It was beautiful. That made people apoplectic in the Republican Party in the 90s, and now this stuff doesn't even register.
Shame doesn't work. And if you're in a negatively polarized and kind of equal-ish two-party system, I mean, did the recall election hurt Gavin Newsom even a tiny little bit? Absolutely not. No, people were able to say, oh, it's the Trump recall. And that was it. And so even though he governed horribly during COVID, really, really badly, and in ways that are transparently hypocritical and infuriating from a lot of people's point of view, he got the exact same vote as he did when he had run for re-election previously.
All fair points. And I suppose it's theoretically possible that something could come out during an impeachment investigation or set of hearings that is damning to you while you still come out on the other end of it successful.
Maybe that lingers, but I don't know if that
nobody cares. I think that's right.
Yeah. I mean, we have to The whole idea about the institutions holding, we've talked about this previously, and guardrails and whatever. The extent that is or was a spectator sport, I think, is over. I've thought of for a long time that this 12-month period, this between the November election that we just had and the midterms, was always going to be the stress test, because you have Trump, who's unconstrained still, and you still have Republicans who are still afraid of his political potency, at least all the way up till the midterms, when they're going to get shellacked, and then they're going to be find a little bit of more kind of strength. And you have Trump saying, okay, I have this latitude here. I'm also, eventually going to be a lame duck sooner rather than later. I want to do the ththings that I want to do. Which means I want my legacy things. I want to get my name on the ballroom. I want to grab more territory than we have. I'm going to engage in these fulfillments, and I'm not going to be too worried about the constraints. Again, the constraint is his own morality. That's the only thing that he recognizes.
Are the constraints, though, because I've been a big believer in the kind of institutional constraints. I still am. it doesn't, to believe in something doesn't mean that you can't have like sincere worries about it and where we are now.
Of course. I'm similar to you. What I'm saying is that like it's I think past the point of passivity.
Yeah,
of
for
like,
sure.
let's just sit around, hope it works out.
I hope it works out. But one of the things that Donald Trump does respond to, and if he had, I mean, he lies about things with such ease and just doesn't care, which, by the way, I just want to say is bad for the country.
Super bad.
It is bad for the system that we have of journalism, of alternative journalism. I mean, Trump lies with such incredible ease, and it's not even things that are even tethered to reality. We have the best.
DC is the safest place in America.
Yeah, we have the best economy we've ever
lowest
had.
crime in history.
I've never seen a turnaround like this ever.
Never in the history of any economy ever. And of course, the Bannon flood the zone bullshit is a great tactic if you're a scumbag, because we're still trying to get Steve to come on the show, so he's not a scumbag. Trump's a scumbag.
Total
But he would
scumbag.
object to that too. But that kind of thing is pretty interesting. But there is a different Trump. There is a private Trump who has some connection to reality in the sense that he went up there today and said, I'm not going to invade. That's not what I'm going to do. Do you think if it was 95% of the American people said, take that motherfucking sheet of ice with its 2 dog sleds, he wouldn't be up there saying, sorry, guys.
Yeah.
He doesn't give a shit about the Europeans. He does actually care about losing elections. And when he does lose, he pretends that he won. Yes, but...
Which he
Which he
reiterated
did
today.
today.
Which he reiterated today, yeah. But the thing about this is ICE stuff is at the constraints of the institutions. There's a lot of that I believe in and that I think has been holding firm. But the one thing that I don't pay enough attention to is the strength of the American people. And the fact that those numbers of border enforcement is very high. We love border enforcement. We don't like this. We don't care. Maduro, great. What a scumbag. He's a drug dealer, blah, blah, blah. Taking Iceland? Come on, man. And that's the 8% that are like, yeah, we like Trump because we like, it doesn't matter. He could punch a baby on television and be like, that fucking baby was a Nazi. Actually, no, they wouldn't do that. They'd be like, that baby was trans. It was a trans baby.
Trans Tifa.
Trans Tifa baby, clearly.
No mention of that issue in this speech.
Yeah, he didn't get there.
Yeah, he did last time when he phoned in for the teleconference.
Of course,
he
because
mentioned
everything is
transition
a fucking
surgeries.
tweet to him. Life is a tweet.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, if you look back at the first Trump administration, and Matt and I were talking about this before we started, and maybe we should discuss this sometime later, maybe even a different episode, the idea that people say, I told you so, because look what's happening. You're coming around now. It's like, no, I don't buy that, because it was a different time.
It doesn't mean Russiagate was right.
Russiagate wasn't right. The fact that you have, Mike Pence, you can hate Mike Pence, but he's a very institutional, conservative Republican. Even the people from outside of the universe were like Rex Tillerson.
Right.
It was like, it wasn't fucking somebody who has a GoPro looking for immigrants, stealing money and setting up Fugazi daycares, which is now in an ICE video.
Which may bolster,
crazy.
I think, bolsters the point that you were making, Matt,
That's the administration
about
now.
the shortcuts and the fact that actually helped to create this unity amongst the Trump administration. Like year 1 of Trump 1.0, like by the end of that year, there'd been so many high-profile firings and terminations. The infighting was
Everyone
all
was
out in the
using the word
open. They were
omnishambles,
trying to
remember?
murder each other constantly. They are unified now. They were positively jubilant in the lower press office yesterday when they had that massive number of influencer journalists who were in the room, who are all pro-MAGA, who like, Mr. President, he couldn't get enough of being there. They couldn't get enough of being there.
I think they clapped when they asked, like, don't you think he's done a great job? Like, Like however ridiculous
that
the
is
mess.
a Soviet press corps.
One other thing that I noticed between
press
like the last Davos speech, which again wasn't quite a speech, he's like a remote teleconference, is he mentions Doge. And that was one of the first things that he mentioned early in the speech. No mention of that this time around, but even in defeat with something like that, these same people are happy to memory hole that, move along to the next thing, and
weirdly,
applaud
the only
like seals
one
for Greenland.
that the real hardcore MAGA half-wits don't want to memory hole is actually Jeffrey Epstein, which is the one that, for so many reasons, deserves to be memory holed because, have this guy on CNN, on Abby Phillips' show, who I think he's running for Congress or something. He was I think he survived a school shooting. There's like a whole bunch of these people. And he's like a very far left-wing guy. And he was arguing with Scott Jennings. And Scott Jennings just beat the tar out of him. But he tweeted today, and he's like, well, our president, who is a international pedophile and runs an international pedophile ring. This guy's on CNN.
Runs
right? Yeah,
the ring.
And then you have this Jennifer Welch woman who is being interviewed by The New Yorker. That is literally David Remnick interviewing this screeching lunatic. And it's like, okay, so now all the things that I hated about right-wing media are being transposed on the left. The problem with the Trump stuff is what happens at the end of a regime is the only people who are left are half-wit loyalists. Because you have to be quite dumb in like religious in the sense that you treat MAGA as a religion, not religious, and treat this as a cult. And that's who you're left with. You're not these guys that are the Rex Tillersons of the world who are going to be like, yeah, well, it was a kind of a weird, rough time.
Yeah. One would argue that Marco Rubio is not.
He's the closest.
Is not.
And look, I have a lot of respect for him. I mean, and I don't really give a shit that he throws himself into the kind of MAGA world and speaks in that language, because what I give a shit about is what he does. That is what people said about Trump in the past. Trump is so unhinged now. The things that he does are the things that he says, unfortunately. But, with some exceptions, I mean, the guy's not striking out on everything. But when it comes to Rubio or people criticizing Maria Corina Machado for giving him the Nobel Prize, do you understand this woman's country is occupied by a actual fascist regime, by a psychotic, if anything helps, let the person do it.
Yeah, that's just embarrassing
it is
for
embarrassing.
him.
That's what's required.
For him, not for her.
Yeah, not
for her,
not
I applaud her for that. But
Absolutely.
not, I mean, she's trying to free her country. Marco Rubio, if he's trying to help in Venezuela, in Cuba, in Nicaragua, and he has to go out there and say a bunch of dumb things, okay, fine. Laura Loomer, different story. People in that universe, Steve Bannon, different story.
One or two more clips from Davos.
Emmanuel Macron, I watched him yesterday with those beautiful sunglasses. What the hell happened? But I watched him sort
long
of
pause.
A pregnant pause, yeah.
be tough.
Be tough.
Can we see the sunglasses?
Yes.
Do we have that? Do we have that?
I mean,
look, I think it sounds like he had some sort of medical procedure, and that is the reason for these audacious sunglasses. But you chose the blue mirror.
Yeah, the blue mirror.
You did not have to do that.
You could get
that
the fucking Jaruzelski glasses, and not that.
Keep it dark. You keep it black. Classic. No mirror.
Apologize for those fucking awesome shades. I think he looks fantastic. I think I'm going to go shopping for
that. Are
blue.
you serious?
Absolutely, yeah.
The blue tinted aviators?
Especially when I'm at Davos next. I think I'm going to go with
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
well,
I would go with the Steve McQueen blue. Like, it's a hint of blue, but it's not mirrored. It just, you can almost see through it. Looks better.
It'd be great if he had Oakley blades on. Just came with wraparound John Kruk in 1985.
Yeah.
That'd be great. That I would respect, because that's just kind of a
And also with the bozo string in the back, too.
Yeah. So Mark Carney, you mentioned, Matt, because he's the Prime Minister of Canada, because Donald Trump said Canada should be the 51st state, and everyone said, no, we're not going to vote for the guy who's kind of Trump-ish, which he's not really. But you sent around his World Economic Forum Davos speech.
To which he got a standing O.
To which he got a standing O, and one of the worst tropes in Hollywood and in usually left-wing politics and media is everyone thinks a speech is going to do it. The climax of the movie is that the guy gave a really good speech.
Yeah.
That never works. No one remembers almost any State of the Union addresses and other types of speeches. There's really just a small handful of speeches that are any good or that matter at all.
Like Denzel at the end of Training Day. Which is pretty good.
That's a good speech. Not as directly political, but we'll get into the Suge Knight theoretics later. But this speech I've seen thrown around more than I recall any speech, certainly at Davos.
Certainly from a Canadian Prime Minister.
Certainly from a boring looking.
It overtook Brian Mulrooney's great stem winder.
Millet's speech last year, actually, we talked about it, I'm pretty sure, was pretty good. Poor Millet, he had to follow Trump today.
Yeah.
So like he shuffles in with his little platform shoes and there's nobody in there.
He did pretty well though. I mean, they were all horrified.
Talking about Rothbard and stuff.
Yeah.
But Carney's speech is legitimately significant, and in which he starts with the Václav Havel famous greengrocer example in his essay, The Power of the Powerless, and then goes on and lay it down.
We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false, that the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient, that trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim. This fiction was useful, and American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes. So we placed the sign in the window. We participated in the rituals, and we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain no longer works. Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition.
This is so interesting to me on a bunch of different levels, including parts that I disagree with him on. But I think the most right thing that he does there is saying this is a rupture, not a transition. It's belated realization. Trump has been around now for 11 years in the kind of and that challenge to the global order. We've seen a lot of challenges like Brexit, like this sort of populist revolt that we've spent a lot of time talking about against these kind of once glorious but very fatigued institutions has been with us for a long time. And my God, Western Europe always finds a way to talk about it instead of doing a goddamn thing about most.
And just to add one quick thing about that is Nigel Farage, who's been a very stalwart Trump ally.
The most Trumpy guy in England. Yeah.
Yes, and Mr. Brexit has been incredibly critical of Trump in the past week. Very critical.
And Daniel Hannan, who had peeled off before, has also just been like incredibly
He's been great.
Vociferously against what Trump has done. It's like, this is all madness. The rupture, not a transition, is the reality. And this was the reality at the beginning of the Russian invasion into Ukraine in 2022. That was a rupture, not a transition. It was less, tethered to Trump's persona and about his particular challenges to sort of NATO. But it's like a lot of things associated with our best writers, I would put Václav Havel, Thomas Jefferson, Martin Luther King, George Orwell in these categories. They belong to everybody. When you quote them, everybody's sort of satisfied on their side. So a lot of people reacted to this saying, aha, see, he's calling out Trump. And Trump is the liar, and that's, and America is sort of this fiction that we sort of imposed upon everybody. I see a lot of pro-Trump people saying, aha, they all knew it was bullshit. They were taking advantage of us all of these years. Like it sort of reconfirms everybody's priors in an interesting way, in like almost a symbiotic way. Europe, the ultimate subtext of this is, what do you do if you are a middle country? I think he even uses that phrase.
Middle powers?
Middle power in this. Yeah. And that's actually the whole point of NATO. It's the whole point even of things that are more boring, like the World Bank, all these multilateral institutions, the World Trade Organizations. They are in some ways questions of the age-old problem of like, shit, your country only has 10 million people. And there's a big aggressive guy over here and a big aggressive guy over there. How are you going to be able to sort of survive, rebuild if you've had a war, which most of the countries did, especially after World War II, but also after the end of the Cold War. All these different communist countries had been destroyed, like Venezuela is now. So what do you do if there isn't some kind of stable superstructure, predictable superstructure that you can sort of be in, and so therefore you don't have to spend 35% of your GDP on military, on an arms race and stuff. You have these structures. And now what he is saying, and Carney is saying, and he's also sort of justifying his own recent trip to China and signing trade deals, is that basically having America at the lodestar of that is no longer dependable. It's what Macron said with his blue sunglasses too. He's like, yeah, he was sort of saying, oh, Europe is, it's good, it's predictable and all these kind of things. It's also boring and it doesn't work very well and it's super bureaucratic. I love having an audience here. But those countries have to do something now. And I think the thing that nationalists and anti-multilateralists have failed to fully bake into their kind of scenario planning is once those middle countries no longer believe in the kind of real myth of the American-led order and can't rely on it, they are going to seek things elsewhere in ways that America doesn't like. And they're also going to engage in arms race. Sweden's going to go after a nuke. Why wouldn't you? Tucker Carlson wants Iran to get a nuke now, which is an interesting concept that we didn't really see coming 10 years ago.
Because everyone's morally the same.
Because everyone's morally the same. But it's also a rational thing to do. If you can't depend on it, you're looking for protection. And if America is acting like the biggest mobster out there, you're going to say, okay, if you've that's how it works now with spheres of influence. You're going to say, okay, who's going to help us here? It's a really kind of like wake up moment right now. And not just for the Mark Carneys of the world and the blue sunglasses of the world.
There could have been such an interesting moment with anybody but Trump, provided they had Trump's bravado. So there's a lot of conversation in most history books about when the United States tries to shake off Vietnam syndrome. Is it 1983 in Grenada? Is it 89 in Panama? Is it
Gulf War?
Is it the intervention in the background in Nicaragua in the 80s with the Contras? It is the Gulf War. I think that's the right answer, is the first Gulf War. And we have a same kind of span of time between the second Iraq War and now, because no one believed the United States would do anything when it came to the Iranian nuclear program, to taking Crimea, to fighting in the Donbass, to invading again in 2022, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Donald Trump did something interesting, which was like, the response was, what are you going to do? We're going to take parts of Georgia. What the fuck are you going to do? Oh, you like Saakashvili? You're going to bring him up there? He's going to name a road after George W. Bush going from the airport into Tbilisi? Congratulations, but what are you going to do? Trump had that moment where it was like, we'll bomb your nuclear facilities, by the way. We will snatch your scumbag leader, by the way. We might even bomb the Basiji headquarters or the IRGC headquarters in Iran. Oh, by the way, we also killed the head of the Revolutionary Guards in Iraq in my previous term, right? I mean, there's a lot of this stuff out there that, oh, look at that. So you can be scared of the U.S. again, because when does Europe start kind of recalibrating its own defense? It actually does it under Biden, because the hemming and hawing from Biden are like, are we going to give them, planes? Are we going to give them fighter jets? Okay, you can do this, but you can't shoot them into Russia, the people who invaded you, despite the fact that their oil refineries are there and everything there that is useful for their war machine. You can't hit them. They're just in your own territory, and there's all these, and Europe steps up. And who become the great kind of saviors there? Poland, Estonia is punching 10 times above its weight and all of this stuff. So they start reassembling under Biden because of Biden's just weakness. Trump comes in, and of course, there's all those problems with Ukraine, and they're too complicated to get into now, but does have that moment of like, yeah, you can't fuck with us, actually, because we're not just going to sit in our hands anymore. And then how long does that last? The man obviously has a very, ADHD brain. Did he mention Iran today? I don't know if he did. I don't
think so.
It was a long speech.
He did build a very direct bridge from Venezuela to Greenland, per your point on previous episodes here of like that success when he was sort of
that's clear.
They all tell me, like they say, sir, I did. You did the perfect military.
Yeah. So. I love it. It's like they all tell me this, and it was like everyone's the crowd. Who was talking to us? Yeah. Do we have a related clip?
Taking down Soleimani, wiping out al-Baghdadi when he tried to reinstitute ISIS. We did a lot. I did a lot of big things. All perfectly executed. Everyone was perfectly executed. Somebody told me that, a military expert told me, sir, everything you've done has been perfectly executed. I said, I know.
That's amazing.
I know.
He said, I know. I know. Yeah, sir, there comes the lie. Right there. Big expert said, and by the way,
it's all worth it for that.
He can't, if you kill the guy and you want to take credit for it, you can't get his name wrong every time.
I don't know, man.
Soleimani, it's like, who?
Actually, no, that's the ultimate degradation.
Yeah.
You think it's on purpose?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe
He's
a
like,
little bit.
Soleimani in Iceland. We're going to take Iceland and Soleimani. It's like, does this guy know what fucking day it is?
The performance of sovereignty, I think, is the phrase that Carney used when he was giving his speech. And he talked specifically about the things that Canada might do now, along with the rest of the middle powers. And specifically, it was brought up to him in the fireside chat immediately after his talk. You guys just met with China. You're kind of reforging your relationship there. Are you at all concerned that this might antagonize the United States a little further, which means you actually have to perhaps be able to sustain more pressure from the administration, at least until or if they are reined in with their use of tariffs to try to get you to play ball. But presuming they could do this in league with Europe and other middle powers, which is just such the phrase actually, it's jarring for me. I think of myself accurately as this kind of apex predator, and it's hard for me to imagine.
Yeah,
I'm a beta, and we're the beta powers. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't really work well. It's fine. It doesn't matter. But I'm curious if you guys think that the strategy being employed or articulated here, to the extent one is being articulated and executed, is likely to be successful. They have gone and forged new, Canada in particular, we can just take them as an example. They're forging different sort of economic relationships. They are trying to make themselves more robust to be able to withstand pressure from the United States. They are talking to China again, which one can imagine that it's good for them to have a better relationship with China, but they also realize that China and the United States have leverage on them. And Carney spoke to that in his speech.
Let's not forget, what's the most important thing about Red China?
What?
China is asshole.
China is yeah.
Donald Trump, don't trust China. China is asshole.
Don't trust China. China's asshole.
Yes, you should diversify your risk in your relationships, and you should especially be in the wake of Trump's blunderbussing through the tariff regime and the global trading order. You should be forging free trade relationships with everybody. But
as Europe is doing now with South America, African countries. I mean, they're literally forming these new blocks at the moment. Yeah.
But also China is asshole, and so it's not a great play to do that. My question as an American,
we should always have that video on demand. By the way, it's the best video in the history of video.
Besides the Indian guys in England,
that is the third in the list. It is like Casablanca, China is asshole, and fucking bloody.
But I think about this in terms of American strategy. That's why I asked you, like, who do you mean is a good thing? In the Trump administration's national security strategy, which is a very interesting document for people like me to read. They spend a lot of time. They don't say the Donroe Doctrine, but this is just like a week or two before they unveiled the Donroe Doctrine. They talk about the Monroe or the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, and kind of the problem of China being around us in the Belt and Road and various investments. And they see it as a priority to convince their neighbors to do less business with China. And that's the problem. Like, that is incoherent with spasmodically punishing them because you're mad they didn't join your little club for peace pay-to-play thing, so I'm going to tariff them. You're not going to convince people to come and join your club when you're acting like a dick.
It's the one way. Trump thinks about this as a unilateralist and as a kind of one-way thinker about this stuff. And this is one of the kind of downsides of having a movement, as much as MAGA is a movement, as a coherent intellectual movement, and I doubt that it is in a lot of ways, that is stuffed to the gills with stupid people. And I keep coming back to this. They have no sense of how any of this works. Like, what happens to those American soybeans that all went to China? Like, oh, fuck. Well, they're going to need us. It's like, no, they'll just buy them from Brazil, which is what they did. If they have no sense of how the international order has been shaped in the past 100 years, they just know they're not a globalist and they're against it. They don't want to be where it's America alone. But these alliances, Donald Trump understands in some implicit way that he needs, because when people don't play ball, he's always saying in these speeches, you need us. Without us, you're nothing. And then when they do something he doesn't like attack them, tariffs, give them 1,000% tariffs, because it actually does mean something on the world stage. Otherwise, he would just swat them away and say, we don't need you. You're little, you're Europe, you're nothing. But he knows that that's not true. In Europe, like if you look at the foundation of all of these alliances, whether it's World War I or the 30 Years' War or whatever it might be, or why the French are helping us in the War of Independence, there's a reason these things happen, because people go around looking for people who reflect their interests. And Donald Trump has this idea that he knows he can't do this, which you see the response. It's usually those people in the kind of other half-wits in the sort of Lutnick universe. And the other guy, what's the other guy? Scott Bessent, who's been embarrassing himself in the most amazing ways recently. Because, by the way, he is an intelligent guy. And he's playing a dumb guy on TV, which is what this administration demands of so many people. But these guys know it. They talk to Trump about it. But Trump has this sense that, you know, I can just go on without anybody. It is America first and America alone. That is, what was the thing that they started, or Marjorie Taylor Greene started, America first and America only. That is somebody who owns a gym in Georgia. That's who says that. I mean, you need other countries for very particular and important reasons, and the dummies in this universe don't understand that.
Carney's setup was all about the polite fictions, right? This is what the greengrocer did under communism. You had to have a sign in your window saying "Workers of the world unite," even though you didn't believe it. And that was the idea. And once you start taking the signs down, there's a crack in this kind of information thing. And he makes the analogy that the polite fictions was that this international world order was the rules-based order was perfect, and we looked the other way when America would sort of transverse. It's like, first of all, you didn't. You carped all the way of it. But so I'll get to that bit. But there's an impolite fiction too, and that's what I think the Bessents and Lutnicks and Trump and a lot of the nationalist movements are doing too. The impolite fiction is that this order was just designed to rip us off. That's all it ever did. You've seen a lot of people, Dominic Pino from National Review, who's been writing pretty well, and Scott Linscomb, our friend.
That Pino guy's very smart. I like his stuff a lot.
The Department of Commerce is like, showing Lutnick videos and Bessent videos saying, the era of globalization is over. We've declared it over in Davos this week.
One today is crazy.
Just today. And people respond to, okay, let's compare real GDP growth per country since choose your year. 1990 is a good one. 1980 could be a good one. 2000 could be a good one. We, America, the median, just like we kick everyone's ass. So what are you talking about? The impolite fiction is that, no, this order was not designed to impoverish us. We've made out pretty good. There have been exceptions to that, individual exceptions to that for sure. And there's a huge democracy deficit there. People didn't really feel like that they were being consulted in the way that their economies were run and their foreign policies were engaged, all of which is real and underrated by the people who like that New World Order, or whatever you want to call it. But it's a fiction that it was set up to rip us off and that we're screwed up or that we can go it alone. The other aspect of it, which is sort of, I think, a little bit fictitious or incomplete coming from the Carney side, right? He's quoting Václav Havel. Havel, whose career I followed very closely, he was obsessed with the concept of responsibility. When he gave a wonderful speech that everyone should go read in front of a joint session of Congress in early 1990. A terrific speech that only Noam Chomsky hated.
Yes, very
which
publicly,
he really did publicly. But in it, and this is back when he did not favor expanding NATO. He wanted to dissolve NATO and the Warsaw Pact because he said, we are ready to take responsibility for our own affairs. We are absolutely broken as a country, but we're ready to start taking moral responsibility. And we can't wait to get on our feet even a little bit, and we will start reasserting ourselves. Czechoslovakia was the 9th biggest economy, or certainly in arms production before World War II. It was a serious country. And we want to take the sense of responsibility. One of the reasons why Carney is wrong when he says like, oh, we looked the other way, we didn't say these things. No, what happens when you're irresponsible? When you are free riding off the American military,
Yes.
it's the people who are less responsible can feel the most to carp and to criticize and to also come up with their own conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories are in many ways an expression of that you don't have control over how things are going. And if America is the one who's ultimately protecting you and you're French, you are going to develop some conspiracy theories about America. And Lord knows there were like big ones after 9/11, for example. Yeah. And so that responsibility needs to happen. It is so overdue. Michael's right that some of that has been starting to happen, particularly in North and Northeastern Europe, but it's belated.
I mean, there are two countries there that joined NATO that would never have joined NATO had the Russians not invaded. And they want to be a part of this partnership because all of these people, as Matt rightly points out, there's an annoyance that I have with the Carney speech. I think it's directionally right. Don't love the invocation of Havel in this context. But it is this idea that we all knew that this was a broken bullshit system and we're being lied to all the time. That's not true. But to Matt's point, it is the carping of any junior partner.
Yeah.
It's like you're always complaining about the boss, right? And then you're free riding at the same time. And the reason we all kind of have a similar idea about economics is because that's what happens when you're given things and not asked for it. So when Trump, Obama did too, by the way, push people
very much
on their NATO contributions. But even Trump doesn't understand this, which is really frustrating to me, of like the man who is using this as the hammer doesn't understand when you're talking about the percentage of your GDP that should be spent on the military is spent internally. It's not like we're paying for that. It's like, no, you should spend more in
NATO
your
bucket.
Yeah, it's not yes, it does ultimately have that effect that we would have to share more of the military burden, but that thankfully hasn't happened yet. It has in Afghanistan and things like that. But then, of course, the Danes, who stepped up more than anyone in both Iraq and Afghanistan and caused an enormous political fallout in that country, particularly in Iraq. But, the idea, the other thing that's encoded in this is that we don't always agree with our allies. Donald Trump gets pushback from his allies and he tries to set them on fire. What did Ronald Reagan say about the Falklands War? He was opposed to it. What did Margaret Thatcher say about the invasion of Grenada? She was opposed to it. And they had an enormous amount of friction. There wasn't like, let's go tariff the UK, let's tariff the United States.
Let's meme the shit
out of it.
Let's
meme the shit out of it. It's like, this is not a grown-up administration. It's not a serious administration. Are there serious people in it? There are some. But ultimately, the decider, to quote our friend George W. Bush, is Donald Trump. And the decisions are based on instinct. And Carney is having like this kind of conversation that Donald Trump's not involved in. We're not having these deep kind of conversations about where does the world go in the post-America order. Donald Trump hasn't thought about that, doesn't give a shit about that, sees a limit both on his administration and his life. The man is fucking old. He's not going to be on the political scene. Maybe he will be, who knows, in his 90s. He's trying to get it all done now, which is why all must have prizes and all being me. I just want to fill the mantle with all of my achievements. If you're in the way, but what about the post-war order? What the fuck do I care about that?
All of this seems to be about his legacy.
Yes.
I am curious. The proliferation of free trade agreements amongst these different countries, I can see how that should on net be beneficial. I'm curious about the downside risk, perhaps, of Europe trying to take more responsibility for itself. One of the ostensible benefits of a global world order led by the United States, where everyone is kind of doing the coattail riding, is you've got less opportunities for conflict amongst these various powers whose military isn't particularly robust. They're not really going to be starting any trouble. They at least realize that they really can't resort to taking this sort of unilateral action that the United States can in various other places. Is the upshot of this that we live in a world that is more likely to, and Carney alluded to some of this as well, like we already live in a more dangerous world where conflicts are more prevalent. Should that be the expectation going forward if NATO begins to fade in terms of its relevance, which it already has?
But also to point out what I said before is it was the case before when the presumption was you're never going to do anything. As I said, whether it's right or wrong, and I'm not saying that I agree with this or disagree with this, is that when Donald Trump started punching back, whether that is in Iran, Venezuela, and threats in various other places, he says, I'm stopping wars. Stopped 8 wars. Do you think he could name the 8 wars that he supposedly stopped?
And he can't say Azerbaijan.
No, he can't. Yeah. Soleimani. Okay, try Azerbaijan next. No, but like that, the frequency of Russian military aggression increased long before Donald Trump.
Yeah.
It was the disaster of Iraq. And it was people not understanding, myself included, the real knock-on effects on America's reputation. And when Americans themselves recoil, the party itself that created this entire situation, the Iraq situation, they didn't create this, they created America going into Iraq in 2003, then rejected it themselves. And it's like, these guys got no fight. They got nothing left in them. We can do whatever the hell we want. And then the Georgia stuff happens. What are you going to do? You're going to fight Russia? There was a moment where if it was a different geopolitical set of interests, there's a Donald Trump who would be like, yeah, I will, right? But so I think that kind of weakness of America as a global hegemon and then global policeman being that I'll actually go and police the world, is something that was destroyed by the invasion of Iraq.
Yeah, and there was a lot of sovereignty busting that happened both on the neoconservative right and the interventionist, humanitarian interventionist, or what's the
Samantha Power left, yeah.
Responsibility to protect, R2P, left, saying that we have to step in when there's an atrocity happening. That was sort of a pincer movement, but also like Iraq just ruined us as a country who could imagine doing that kind of thing. But to answer your question, yes, of course. I think there's going to be more war. The idea, I think there's been this sort of dream on the kind of Chomsky left and the libertarian right, definitely a horseshoe theory situation that NATO is why there's war in this world, as opposed to it's a defensive alliance that hasn't really gone to war that much. And as during its run, its sort of 75-year run, was the only thing to really ever suppress war in the European continent. The natural state of Europe is to be at war. And it created this unnatural lack of war that was interesting. But at the same time, I do kind of identify with how Carney put it in this. Like, it's not worth being nostalgic for that. Yeah. It's over. It's over. It's time to – I've been writing and talking about this for many, many, many years now. It's like time to build the next thing, because you can't just have this very, very fatigued. I mean, like Joe Biden would be out there. They'd sort of wheel him in this direction. Microphone's over there, Grandpa. And he'd say, oh, we've rebuilt our alliances best they've ever been transatlantic.
Yeah.
And like, it's just dead. It's dead. There's no juice in it. So you have to replace it with something. You have to recognize that things have changed.
Neoconservatives before 9/11 were turning all their attention to China. I mean, almost every one of them. And, that's where Steve Bannon is, the man who hates the neocons. But neoconservatism, one of its huge weaknesses was not being able to get out of the Cold War frame of mind. I mean, it was a movement that was distilled during the Cold War. It was obviously a domestic policy, James Q. Wilson kind of thing, a liberal who's been mugged or liberal who's been mugged by reality, depending on who's saying it. And then it becomes a kind of global thing with socialists, and it was, the Trotskyites, et cetera. It's like, there are people of the left who were appalled by the apologias for communism. And they're like, no, that's not where we are. So one of the things in the post-war sense, the post-Cold War sense of NATO is NATO keeping us safe. Sure. Yeah, sure. NATO's keeping us safe. Let's say that. Yeah. I mean, it's not falsifiable in a lot of ways. But one of the things that's really keeping us safe, and I fear that we're losing this now, is the rejection of the two major totalitarian ideologies of the 20th century. Communism and fascism. That was the problem. That was the necessity of NATO. That was the necessity of the Second World War. And it was the Second World War built off a failed international coalition after the First World War and the League of Nations and Woodrow Wilson. But we have this thing now. It's like, oh, the extreme nutbags are back. They're rewriting the history of the Second World War. They're a generation of people who don't remember the Cold War and saying, this communism thing seems pretty good on paper. And they, march through the streets. And is it a big movement? I don't think so. Is it worrisome? Yes. It should always be worrisome, because that was not the case 20 years ago. That there was a groundswell of people, you would run away from the word socialist if you were trying to win any election in the United States. That's no longer the case. That is different. And also, we have a Republican Party that has owned so much state intervention in the economy that it makes those ideologies more palatable and more acceptable.
Imagine Barack Obama seizing government stakes in more than 14 businesses.
Well, he did one, and it caused...
and it was huge backlash.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge backlash was, when was the last time anyone listening or watching this show thought of the phrase cash for clunkers, right? And
Government Motors,
GM. That was, the entire right was upset about that. Mm-hmm. There were white papers from Heritage, AEI, Cato, and probably the only one left is Cato now, when the government is buying and owning and investing in companies. And you say, I saw that chart too of 14 of them. This is a totally different world. Jason just put this up on the screen. This is Wall Street Journal.
Trump calls off tariffs on Europe over Greenland. Sounds like there is the framework of a future deal on Greenland. I think maybe there's a Truth Social post that gives us a little bit more context.
The context is he lost again, right? This is Taco.
Or he won. What's the deal?
The amazing thing that people think this is winning is we threatened this yesterday, and then I called them off after speaking to a hostile room at Davos. If this is, you said, I'm not going to take it by force, and by the way, no tariffs. Is this a victory for Donald Trump? Mm-hmm. I don't see in any place that this is a victory.
Can you read that in your best Trump voice there, Moynihan? Can you?
No,
see that?
I got to work on the Trump voice.
But you can read it, right?
Based on a very, very productive meeting that I've had with Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, we have formed the framework of a future deal with respect to Greenland, and in fact, the entire Arctic region. The solution, if consummated, will be a great one for the United States of America and all NATO nations. Based on this understanding, I will not be imposing the tariffs, capital T, that were scheduled to go into effect on February 1st. Additional discussions are being held concerning the Golden Dome as it pertains to Greenland.
Told you.
Further information will be made available as discussions progress. Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Special Envoy, the dumbest man in Washington, Steve Witkoff. That's my, by the way, that was my parenthetical. And various others, as needed, will be responsible for the negotiations. M-dash, mysteriously. They will report directly to me. Thank you for your attention to this matter. That is something approximating a normal statement.
He didn't capitalize the thank you for your attention to this matter.
I really want to see how these tweets are getting generated. I also want to see who's responsible for making the memes. I've seen that
documentary where he's like, there's like some...
But I don't imagine he actually typed that out. Is he dictating the capitalizations too?
No, there's always some like blonde girl who was like an Alabama cheerleader, and he's like, take a note. And then you realize it's maybe she doesn't know how to capitalize things. Because there's a video of it.
She's the problem.
Yeah, she's the problem. It's not Trump.
Blame all women.
Mr. President, would you like to capitalize random words? Just like German, let's do it.
So we don't need to wait to see whether or not this is a good deal, Matt Welch. You're shitting on the president's progress here already.
Yes.
You don't want a golden dome, a great big beautiful golden dome.
We could have a golden dome regardless of Trump threatening to invade a NATO ally.
How much is that going to cost us, by the way?
I have no idea.
What is the Golden Dome? It's something billions and billions.
Trillions. It'll be a lot. It'll be a lot.
And who are we protecting against? What is is it Russia?
Russia and China.
Russia and China.
Yeah.
Mostly China.
Yeah.
Okay. The Golden Dome. No, it is a Golden Dome. It's not the Iron Dome. The Iron Dome is the Israeli one, but he called it the Golden Dome. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Anything else in this fucking stupid world that we have to talk about?
We have an email about Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Should we read that? So like in before we pivoted to video, we used to have our members only episodes, which are literally just available to paying subscribers, so they can get the first 15, 20 minutes free tease, and then Moynihan usually yells at you, right?
Yeah, usually I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you cheap bastards?
So before we went to video, those episodes
Scottish?
used to be us like getting on Riverside. God, isn't that so great? We haven't used Riverside in a long time.
Speak for yourself.
And I would read a lot of emails from people, and we'd respond to them. Usually, Moynihan, what's the best book about like the Uruguayan, revolt of?
We did actually get an
1420
email. Recently.
But we haven't done that lately because a lot of our members only are like, oh, you just talk to Chuck Klosterman and other people like that. So
great episode, by the way, if you're a huge Gen X nerd.
Yeah, it's
a lot of nerdery.
Music and nerdery and dudes with beards and glasses. So we're going to start, we're just experimenting with just reading at the end of our regular episodes. So the people who can...
why are we doing that? We want people to subscribe. But this is the regular episode. This is free.
Yeah.
Why the fuck are we giving this?
Because producer Jason told me to.
The production meeting on mic.
We had a production meeting that you were late
to.
Oh my God.
You were out like...
Jocko. Jason always... chickens out. We call it Jocko.
Mohako. All right, this is from Mark Erickson. So to be a subscriber, you go to theweedyfifth.com.
Did you just read his last name?
Yeah.
Did I?
Yeah.
That's fine.
He doesn't say anything racist, does he?
Yeah, we'll beep it out. Or not.
Hi, guys. You've helped me keep me sane through some pretty insane times. A lot of nice words here. But then I thought your discussion of ICE in Minneapolis was really good, but incomplete. Okay. Then there's another half of the story here that I think is at least equally important as to the behavior of the people and the politicians in these sanctuary jurisdictions is truly appalling. They are basically in open defiance, not just of particular incidents or enforcement practices, but of the entire mission of immigration enforcement. And let's not kid ourselves, in as much as there are some incidents of ICE picking on day workers, some incidents, or people going into their swearing in ceremonies, the vast majority of their targets are really, really bad people. Which kind of makes you wonder, why is it left to ICE to go get these guys? Where are the cops? The answer is that the cops have been told to stand down. You'll notice that this messy stuff isn't happening in cities where local law enforcement cooperates with ICE, just in these #resistance jurisdiction, culture of lawlessness in places like Minneapolis and Portland, et cetera, et cetera.
Matt, what about that? I mean, we've had a couple emails like this. There are a lot of bad people, said we're going after the worst of the worst. Doesn't look like that happened. But if it's not being enforced, and because it's been so terrible in so many ways in the way ICE is deploying, like this occupying force in, violating the Fourth Amendment when they get out of their car to get a cup of coffee. But to that point, though, is it not, the protests are insane. Invading churches, or pulling people out of cars and looking for, are you with ICE? It's gone crazy on the other side, too. That my advice to people on the left, don't do that.
Get out of your car.
Because you have people on your side now. It's trending towards you. But does he not make a reasonable point?
I went prodded by this, and because I just kind of wanted to look at the worst of the worst claim. It's not true that the majority of the people that ICE are apprehending are the worst of the worst.
But that was the claim from the administration at the beginning.
Yes, at the beginning. And so what are the numbers? The numbers are interesting. The numbers are mostly compiled by David Beer, who I don't think has been on the program, but we know of him, his work at Cato, and people who like ICE don't like David Beer in general, or our former guest Alex now Rasta. But David Beer has done a lot of empirical work on this, and you can see ICE has its own database of the worst, and you could see the history of arrest records of the people. 75% of the people who've been pulled over, detained by ICE since like last November, 75% have no criminal conviction on their record. So that's of course the headline number that he goes with, and he's right to in his own advocacy. I'm also interested that 5% are convicted violent criminals. All right, so it's not the worst of the worst. But like 5% of the people that they're grabbing are convicted violent criminals. Like, how do they not get deported before? And I think that goes to some of the questions here and some of the discussion that I had with Karen Bass we talked about recently on one of the episodes is like, if sanctuary cities means you are not sharing information about the violent convicted criminals under your jurisdiction, then you need to unsanctuary. That's not you. That's a violent criminal who is also an illegal immigrant. That if you poll Americans on this, it's like 97-2 about like deport that motherfucker. What are you even thinking about? So to that, I totally agree, Mark, with that idea of it. But also, it's not generally the worst of the worst who are being apprehended. And Peter Moskos, who's great, is in the Truly Lost episode that we recorded because we didn't record it, has pointed out that because people are having arguments on Twitter like, oh, you're just cherry picking these social media videos of ICE acting bad and doing kind of bad policing and guns drawn everywhere. Peter Moskos, who is a former cop and discusses these issues, has pointed out like, okay, there's 12,000 ICE cops, there's 35,000 NYPD on staff, like operating right now. NYPD has had like basically full cameras, and also we're in a pretty much a surveillance state here, and then everyone else has their own camera. They've had those cameras for 10 years. You have seen more. So like if they do bad things, we will see them. There's been more obvious bad ICE policing shown in the last week than probably you've seen from NYPD over the last 10 years. Because NYPD—
And that prompted a lot of stuff like the Eric Garner stuff, which was filmed by bystanders.
Well, the cameras, in New York.
And that prompted a lot of that reform. One incident. So a couple 10, 20 incidents is always concerning.
Well, that's the piece of the equation that I think is missing, and that our wonderful viewer, listener, emailer is not acknowledging, which is that when these things happen, there is the video that it comes. Like, what happens afterwards? Is there an investigation? Is there any evidence that anyone has been punished or prosecuted? I mean, we have a gentleman who shoots and kills a woman during a stop of some sort, or they were conducting a stop. She was impeding their investigation, if you want to put it that way. But she ends up dead. Is there an investigation? Well, it sounds like there's no civil rights investigation. There's a federal investigation into the shooting.
They've said that there is an investigation.
But the investigation is also into her partner, into their affiliations with various political organizations.
Totally irrelevant.
And now, as of this week, we have subpoenas of Jacob Frey and Governor Tim Walz. But also, I think Keith Ellison, it looks like also is subpoenaed. And all of these people are being investigated now for having fomented some sort of unrest in Missouri.
The mafia mindset doesn't stop at Greenland. I mean, the intimidation is the point. I mean, this is what happened with the Federal Reserve and rates. And as I said, the guy who was the senator, and I can't remember which one it was, who was saying, make a deal with us. That's what they're trying to squeeze. Like, they don't give a shit about the Constitution, any of these matters. We can find these things to investigate you, and it's down the line people who have wronged Donald Trump, people who have previously used lawfare against him, which is wrong, and we've had disagreements with friends of ours who have said that, no, we have to do this now because we have to slap them in the face. But it's beyond that now. It's introducing these things because Keith Ellison or Jacob Frey or Tim Walz have said things as an occupying army. Tim Walz has been a total fucking idiot throughout this. He's always been an idiot. He shouldn't be a public servant. And he was like, go out there with your cameras and document the atrocities. He literally said that. I was just like, oh, okay. The Rwanda idea that, people are being, bad stuff is happening. Your job as the adult in the room, as the vice president who could have been, is to turn that down a little bit. They're all performing for social media, and you see that with Gavin Newsom in Davos. It's like this embarrassing, they're all borrowing that stuff from Trump, and I just hope in the future they don't borrow the persecution of your political enemies.
I'm not so sure.
To the point, I'm not so sure either, because it is important for people on the left, and I disagree with them on so much of the stuff when it comes to just basic enforcement, not the bad stuff that we're seeing, is that you need to control yourselves and stop, trying to open people's car doors to see if they're wearing balaclavas and if they're ICE, going into churches. It doesn't matter if that guy works for us. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. Well, did he? Did the pastor do X, Y, and Z? You don't drag collaborators out and shave their head in Paris in 1944.
Get out of the churches.
Get out of the fucking churches. You're ruining any tailwinds that are behind you, and that includes the unbelievably stupid and embarrassing performances from the mayor, from the governor, and from everybody else. But does that necessitate or even allow any way constitutionally? You can find your ways around it. You can find the reason that you're doing this, right? But to go after those people with the DOJ, someone is probably somewhere writing a book. And if they're not, somebody should be writing a book. Cataloging the utter corruption and politicization of the DOJ. It is a real national embarrassment. And it's terrifying and scary in a lot of ways, too.
And Iceland.
But hold these two ideas at the same time. People can be shitty, and the response to them can be shitty, too.
And you can also track the movements of, monitor and record the movements of ICE in your city without using your car to try to get in their way, which is a big, dangerous instrument.
Did you see the Minneapolis? It was
this is
before we go to this 60 minutes ago, the clip of the police officer in Minneapolis,
right.
who gave a press conference and said one of his officers had pulled over and said try to take the person's phone because they were filming, and only left when said, "I'm a member of the police force here." Which is one of these things happening. We haven't even seen that video, by the way. Presumably because the police department's like, we can talk about this. Let's not create a thing.
They're coming guns drawn to way too many to interactions. There's some agents who are just like filming people constantly and then sort of using their facial recognitions in ways that's kind of strange. And as we learned on Barry Weiss's 60 Minutes,
Barry Weiss, to say it more bass, more sinister tone.
Papers, Please is a thing.
Our officers are conducting targeted enforcement, looking for the worst of the worst. If they encounter anybody in the area of which they're operating, they are okay to talk to those people. They've been authorized to talk to anybody that's around there and establish citizenship.
How is that targeted enforcement?
If they were in that area looking for a target and they were en route or coming from that target and encountered that individual, they are authorized to talk to somebody, speak to somebody.
How do you define the area? Officers are walking down the street, driving down the street, the entire city of Minneapolis. Is everybody potentially under suspicion?
No, nobody's under suspicion, but we're looking for those targets. And again, if we encounter somebody as we're walking up to a building, as we're en route to that building, that's still part of that operation as they proceed to that target.
It's the debasement of language that I find so offensive here. Like the notion that you could have targeted enforcement while endorsing a policy of you can stop anyone you see en route to the particular area.
By the way.
And we've also, we've just seen the video of this over and over again. There was another clip I saw, I think it was Sky News or something, was just on the ground in the city, surveilling what's happening in general. I don't think they were doing a ride along. And they see ICE officers roll by. They see someone at a bus stop. They pursue this person and go to interrogate them. What is happening if not racial profiling when you see a woman that's just standing at the bus station and then you start to ask her a question and ask her for her papers? She insists she's a citizen. They arrest her anyways, take her away and release her hours later.
Got to prove it.
It's incredible. It's amazing. If you were remotely serious about just enforcing federal immigration law, and the real challenge here is that the city won't cooperate. They won't cooperate with us. This is the most obscene, ridiculous way to go about it. It's wasteful of resources. Yeah. It undermines people's civil liberties, and it helps to create this climate of concern and fear. The next place that you have a surge will be infinitely more dangerous because of all of this. Yeah. And I just can't, there's no justification for that. And there's no excusing the administration's kind of performative, theatrical approach to all of these things, which is clearly intended to be a display of force. It is a kind of provocation, both against their enemies and their adversaries or perceived enemies and adversaries, and for the benefit of their supporters.
Which is the point, obviously, is and I don't know this guy's name, but it's back to the triumph of the stupid. I mean, the fact that this is the guy that you put out there who looks like he can barely formulate a sentence and is the one that introduces between us going and then coming, like he actually creates that scenario, which is a really bad thing in a media strategy way. Like you just created that. And she rightfully says, well, if he's flying on a plane. I mean, imagine that. Like, I'm going to enforce an ICE. I'm on my way to an enforcement. Is like the person in 7B. You look a bit Mexican. Like what? I mean, it's the most insane thing that this guy sets up, but it's also terrifying for 1,000 other reasons. The amount of money and resources that you put into things, you can have this stuff very targeted. You can figure things out. You can surveil people in a way that is quiet, which is what was done in the past, so I'm told. You don't have to swarm areas and like, you. And do we know that this is happening? Something which amounts to racial, cultural, ethnic profiling. Yeah, we saw the video we were talking about before we started. Like, well, you have an accent. And the guy's like, well, yeah, you do too. It's, yeah, everybody has an accent. But that's why I'm asking. My probable cause is you have an accent. I mean, I know people here have lived in this country for 70 years and still have accents.
How many cops in the NYPD have an accent?
I mean, particularly the ones that write tickets, because they're all Bangladeshi. It's amazing. Don't park. No.
Yeah, it's quintessentially Trumpian stuff.
I'm not getting those tickets.
Double park. No. 2 times ticket. 2 times ticket. Yeah, you can't do that. That's literally what the guy sounded like, the one who gave me a ticket. He was very nice. But no, this kind of thing is so transparently bad and wrong and frankly un-American, is that, and you're like, well, they get the bad guys too. It's like, no, that's fine. You can get the bad guys in a more normal way. And it's so transparently bad that you see people saying, well, it doesn't happen that much.
Yeah.
Isn't there a clip?
Why are you saying it should happen all the time if it's fine?
Isn't there a clip of Besant from like this week talking about Greenland in particular, where he's like, well, what is the national emergency? I think it was on one of the Sunday shows.
It was on the Sunday show.
It was like the national emergency is avoiding a national emergency.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like this is the
infinite regress of arguments. Yeah.
Everything is a national emergency.
Correct.
Because if not, I mean, it's an emergency.
It would be a national emergency. So to prevent the national emergency, we have to declare a national emergency. It's like the fucking Abbott and Costello way of running a government. This is embarrassing. That guy is Marcos Charles. I would love, I looked this up, by the way, to see what this guy's background was.
Oh, no.
Couldn't find anything.
There's no Andover for him?
No. There's no Andover for him. No, I would hate him more if he went to Andover. But having something, like, did you get the GED? Because they're throwing it.
Jesus.
Why is it wrong that we want our fucking public officials who are arresting people as in the papers to have a basic education?
But I don't know
I
don't know if he's stupid or if he's just accurately articulating the policy of the administration as best as anyone can, because that's what it is.
Yeah, but he also agrees with it.
Right, but this is their policy.
Yeah, no, and smart people should not agree with that policy. Like, if you're around and I'm around, I can ask. It's like, can you? What's the probable cause here? It's like, well, you look a little, okay, so that's racial profiling. No, it's not. The circular arguments that these people, there's no good argument to stopping somebody and asking if they're American, if they have their papers, whatever, if they have an accent. Much in the same way that we've seen this, and our friends at Fire posted this the other day, a video in Miami. It was very polite. It was the interaction was polite, and the person said, fuck off. All of you say fuck off if somebody comes to your door and says, what did you post on social media? Do you remember conservatives getting mad about this when it came to England?
Yeah, last week.
Like last week.
Yeah.
This has happened. There's a couple of these videos circulating. If it happens twice, that's 2 times too many.
In this country.
In this country. And I saw Robbie George, the Princeton University conservative, very kind of social conservative guy, saying, yeah, they were polite and everything, and then in capital letters, like, this does not happen in America. Well, it is happening, and people are testing these limits, and we have to pull them back. Did you post about Israel? I think was the thing on the Miami one. Wasn't something about Israel?
It was some totally benign tweet where she was criticizing a government official for saying something or not saying something.
Well, I assume it's about Israel when I see certain people posting about it.
It was
the Jewish community, yeah.
And I don't know the context for the Texas one. Look, it's entirely possible that you could post something online that is an actual threat against someone else. In which case, someone shows up at your house. The case in Florida, totally benign post.
It was about the mayor,
critical of the mayor, and not much else besides. I'm not even sure that there was a vulgar word in it.
Yeah,
it's completely insane.
Yeah, why did you post this? The correct answer to that question is none of your fucking business.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. End of story. Close the door.
And there's just going to be, if you are pulling people over for basic racial profiling, accents, you look Mexican even though you're Native American, as they did to a guy in the Navajo Nation in Arizona this week. If you're doing this and you have a predilection towards guns drawn, macho bullshit, masks on, talking like a tough guy in high school.
No body cams.
The potential for deadly conflict is just going to rise. We are an armed country. There's a lot of people who are not going to appreciate that kind of stuff. That's bad. That's bad business for absolutely everybody involved. I ask the question again and again and this is true of Jacob Fry, and this is true of that little midget who's like in Ice, who's in all those little, he looks like Sean Penn. And
Peter Dinklage.
Come on, no,
Is there another one?
That's a different guy.
How would you behave if you really thought political violence was a problem and you didn't want to escalate it?
And not an opportunity.
What would you do differently?
Wait, we had I think it was a text from Jason to us, to the chain last night, about J.D. Vance going to Minneapolis.
To help.
And as I said, and I wrote something very critical of Obama, I think it was in the Weekly Standard, when he had the beer summit at the White House after the officer in Cambridge came to the house.
Henry
Louis Gates. And I wrote a kind of critical thing about that. And it's like, God, do I long for those days? Because ultimately it's kind of benign of like, I'm just going to try to bring us together kind of stuff. I mean, it wasn't necessarily critical of Obama, but it was the whole interaction that was kind of misrepresented. But this is not what you expect from a guy who immediately declared the woman who was shot in her car good.
Terrorist.
Called her a domestic terrorist.
Yeah.
Did he accuse her of eating cats and dogs?
No.
That's
no,
just
not yet. That's just true.
Yeah.
That's just true. They're eating the swans. I think they were killing the swans too. But that kind of stuff is like, is that the person, the adult in the room who went to Yale Law School? So this is a great example of why education doesn't mean anything. You think he's going to go calm things down? Well, maybe he can surprise us. I hope he does. But that would normally, in a normal situation, regardless of the administration, be something that would be hopeful. Okay, this is getting too tense. Let's go and have a town hall and try to calm people down. That's I don't believe what's happening. They see this as
it's
a political advantage, unfortunately.
Taking the under.
Yeah. What is that?
That's I don't think we're gonna do that.
What is that? I don't even know who that is.
Yeah, it's complicated.
All right. Well, maybe people can subscribe, and we'll talk about it then.
Yeah, it was just it was supposed to be a prompt for people. Like if you are a subscriber, you can go in the comments in the chat, and the chat is both of them are some of the only places on social media that are tolerable.
Yes,
it's true. It's our listeners. I mean, I go there to see what's going on, and so they're reacting in real time.
Even though they can be quite mean to the
us.
Three of us. Yeah.
There's a guy today in the chat who's like, and this is not even a response to you, Kmele, because you weren't there, but like after the Klosterman thing, it was just like it was like, can we just admit that the guys don't really have that good taste in music?
And this guy offered up what? Share your Spotify playlist, tough guy. Let's see what you got. And I'll skip through all the
real issues that matter.
Animatronic songs and Milli Vanilli. What? Who says that?
See.
Ugh, get out of here. No, we like you. Stay in the thing. But but back it up. Say what is good. Yeah. If you think what we think is bad. But obviously that was all about Chuck's music taste, because we did spend about 3.5 hours on Van Halen.
And
which is appropriate because he just wrote a book
I
about
mentioned
football.
Y&T. Yeah. Forgotten about Southern California band. Justly forgotten about, by the way. I did also mention the band Keel, whose singer, Ron Keel, then went on to have a country career and became Ronnie Boy Keel. Yeah.
Yeah, it worked out great for him, obviously.
Great facts you get on the show.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it. Bye.
Bye.
We know of new methods of attack. The Trojan horse, the fifth column.